In this video, we are smashing together two car manufacturer logos and hoping that the outcome doesn't look like a car crash. First up, who's ready for some German rivalry with a combination of Audi and BMW? So the first concept was to take the BMW logo in the circle, duplicate that up 4 times and put it in the same format as the Audi logo. Now once I had this, I wasn't actually sure about it. I think the gap between like the middle crosshair part of the logo and the outer ring on the BMW logo just made this all look a little bit spindly and a little bit messy when compared to the Audi logo. So in order to remedy that, I took off the outer ring from the BMW logo and then enlarged the inner crosshair section of the BMW logo so that it fitted the inside of the Audi rings absolutely perfectly. Added a white stroke to the Audi logo just to separate the BMW and Audi sections out. Pretty happy with the icon now, so it's time to work on the text. BMW plus Audi can only mean one thing: Bowdy. This font is the official Audi font, which is actually taken from the official website, so very much on brand for the Audi style. I couldn't actually find out what that font was in the BMW logo, so if anyone knows, slap that in the comments please. So with a little bit of kerning and a bit of resizing, I just wanted to make this look visually balanced with the icon. Now when I was looking at this, I could see that there was something wasn't sitting quite right to my eyes. So I thought what it was is because we had the 4 repeated crosshairs kind of all be in the same direction. So I tried rotating like every other one. But then I didn't like how that looked either. And then I realised it's the overlaps between each of the original Audi rings where they were half blue and half white. It was just something not quite sitting right with me. So what I did was just make some white ellipses and then put them in front of the BMW's logo but behind the Audi logo so that it made it look like a cut out through. And that just removed some of the complexity and some of the visual stress from in there. So now this is what I've got and I like it, but I did have one other idea, so I decided to start making that as well. So 2 options for Bowdy. I spent 5 or 10 minutes working up this little idea, which I was trying to make have like overlapping loops, just as a way of combining the Audi and BMW logos in a different way. I realised after about 5 or 10 minutes work that it just was going nowhere and to rethink the idea. So the next idea was, instead of putting the BMW logo inside the Audi logo, it was to put the Audi logo inside the BMW logo. And I did that just by careful positioning over the top and then intersecting that with the Pathfinder. And then it was just a case of selecting each part of the Audi logo and changing the colours so that it contrasts with the background. And I think that turned out quite nicely. Indeed. Next up, it was time to add the text, so I just put another circle around the logo, got the official Audi font, did it in all caps this time to match the original style of the BMW logo, as this one's kind of more heavily BMW orientated. And then once that text was in place, it was just a case of changing the size and tracking to match roughly the original BMW logo text. And once that was done, I was pretty much there. So combining BMW and Audi logos, this is option 1. And this is option 2. Let me know what you prefer in the comments. And also here are a couple of images of what an Audi crossed with a BMW might actually look like. Let's see what happens when you combine the Porsche and the Subaru logo. So the first part of this little project was to recreate the Subaru logo because I couldn't find a nice clean vector version. They all seem to have that weird chrome effect. So I made a square, rotated it around 45 degrees, went to Object, Path, Add Anchor Points, and what that does is add a little anchor point on the straight sections of each of the squares, and that allowed me to grab the corners and stretch them out using S on the keyboard, which is the scale tool, without affecting the inner straight points, which were now like inner points on the star. Then from there, with the direct selection tool, I could highlight over them 4 inner points and then use the same scale tool as earlier to just reposition that perfectly. Then it was just a case of duplicating the stars and positioning them on top of my screenshot. Now I've got this, I just used the eyedropper tool and the gradient tool to get a blue gradient in that oval. And now I've got my clean version of the Subaru logo. It's time to start combining that with the Porsche logo. How are we saying that? Porsche or Porsche? I'll just say Porsche. I've heard a lot of people say Porsche, but I'm just going to say Porsche for this video. So the next step was to build the shield, and that was just super simple with a rectangle. Added a little anchor point in the middle there, and then just raised the corners and just used the live corners to round them out. I use the outline mode a lot on this one because I set the Porsche logo behind my new shield, and the outline mode just helps me make sure everything's lined up nicely and can sort of use it as a template or positioning guide for my elements. Grab that little horse, grab that little inner shield, Instead of Stuttgart in the middle, I wanted to make that somehow relevant to Subaru, so I looked up where was Subaru, found it on Google, and found something in the name that began with S, so I thought that was the perfect thing to add. To create my little shield in a shield around the horse, I just used some offset paths and then a white stroke on one of them, and then just like switch the gradient around of the other just to give it a little bit more depth and kind of give it that effect that the Porsche logo has. So then the next step was to get some of the elements that are going to appear on the shield. So obviously I want the stars that I just built from the Subaru logo, and also these weird little stick things from the Porsche logo. I probably, before I started making this video, should have found out what they are, but I'm actually not sure. And I just hope that someone in the comments can let us know what them things are. So next up, I took the whole outer shape and offset the path a little bit inwards, and then drew some rectangles over that as a way to divide the shield into pieces. The top part here, to create the text area at the top where they have the Porsche word in him, I had to arc the rectangle that I put over there and then expand that, and then I can create that all into one shape. And then the idea is that we're going to change the gradient on that to make it stand out from the background. Repositioned these stars to make them a little bit more aesthetically pleasing on a portrait shield. And then Porsche mixed with Subaru, there's only one thing we can call this, and that is Pubaru. I managed to get my grubby little mitts on a official, well, I don't know if it's official, but let's just say it's an official because it sounds good, 911 Porsche font. And then it was just a case of arcing that text over the top of the shield and making it fit our text area just in the same way as the Porsche logo. So the next part was to add the word mark underneath the logo, and that official, unofficial font, I'm guessing isn't the official font because I could see some errors in there compared to the logo. Such as the aperture on the R just looked a little bit smaller, so I just went in there, I outlined the font and just adjusted a few bits that I thought looked a little bit jarring to my eyes, just by, a lot of the time it was just by copying and pasting the letters, and then with the shape builder tool just cutting bits out or adding bits just to make it look a little bit more official and a little bit more like premium style. So this is what we've got for the Pubaru logo. And here are a couple of pictures of what the car might look like if we did actually mix a Subaru with a Porsche. What happens when we combine the Tesla logo with the Honda logo? It's time to find out. Okay, so first things first, we get the two logos in sweet, lovely, clear, crystal clear vector format. Because both of these logos are symmetrical, it just seemed like the obvious thing to do is align them centrally and basically combine them. So I matched the width and noticed that the top of the T had like the perfect opportunity to align with the two like arms on the top of the H as well. So I basically worked around that. I don't know why I keep saying basically. Add a couple of little white rectangles just to hide the top of the Honda logo. Added a nice chunky white stroke around the Tesla logo, and then made everything black and white, just so we know that this logo will work in the real world with single color application, because even though it's just for a bit of fun, I like to do things properly. Now at this point I'm thinking it does look good, but it also does look like I've just taken the Tesla logo and just literally slapped it on top of the Honda logo without much thought, just kind of add a stroke and oh yeah, there you go guys, we're done. And that's not what I wanted to do. So I wanted to add another layer of interaction between the logos by bringing the Honda logo to the front, adding a stroke, and then applying a clipping mask so that we could only see that part of the stroke on the bottom part of the Tesla logo. And now that just makes these logos look like they're connected rather than I've just slapped the Tesla logo on top. So combining Tesla and Honda, there was only one thing I could do for the name here, and that is Thonda. And that actually reminded me of Kip's girlfriend in Napoleon Dynamite, La Thonda. Font wise, I started with thinking that the Tesla font would be the coolest, so I downloaded a Tesla font and tapped it out. Then I didn't like it, so I outlined it and started playing around with some of the shapes and trying to just make it look a bit nicer. But then I just thought, nah, this looks like a school project, not a professional logo. So I found a font that was similar to the Honda font. I think that I ended up using Super Clarendon, and then it did need a little bit of bastardizing in the way that I had to stretch the T. And instead of rewriting the whole word mark, I thought the T looked good enough next to the rest of the logo that I could just use it. So I was pretty happy with how it looked. Just a few little finishing touches, such as the top of the Tesla logo was just a little bit too close to the frame of the Honda logo. So I pulled that down. And then also I just adjusted the top of the T so that the inner parts of the bottom, if you see what I mean here, I just scaled them in so they matched up with the H, and then made sure the outer part of the top of the T as well also matched up with the outer part of the H. And I think that makes a nice, clean lined logo. So what do you get when you combine the Tesla logo with the Honda logo? This is how I would do it. And I've even slapped it on a nice black and red gradient for you there, so don't say I never treat you to anything. And here is what a Honda mixed with a Tesla might actually look like in the real world.